backgrounds.
This is not an advertisement for Dickie's Barbecue. But we just wanted to do a short intro video as we are beginning this journey of podcasting together, carrying on a conversation together on topics that are important to us and in the circles that we belong to. This is a podcast with the intention to be a blessing to people in their journey in life and in faith, in health, this sort of thing, mental and emotional health, and whatever other goals that a person might want to set that we can address. My name is Jeremy, and Jeremy Krider, yes. I am a resident of Pennsylvania for a little bit over 25 some odd years, and my reason for living where I live now is I moved to the Penn State area to begin a graduate program in music performance. I decided that was not the path for me, but I've always had this interest in reading and in theological studies. So at some point, after gaining a master's degree in German from Middlebury College, which seems forever ago that happened, I also worked in the public schools here, was on staff at a local church as a worship pastor, and had the chance 10 years ago to begin formally my seminary education, pursuing ultimately, hopefully, a doctorate in theology. And it has been a whirlwind trip with lots of twists and turns and lots of fascinating stops and vistas on the way. And I've had the chance during my time to come across some pretty profound works of theological import and just authors who are commenting on scriptures and a relationship with God. And I found some of them to be exceptionally useful in my own life, on my faith journey, in dealing with family history and friends and life in general, but also in the context of sharing with people in a mentoring process. So as I do that, and Stephen, who will introduce himself in a moment, has approached me, we both see a need, I suppose, for some sort of format like this where we can get together and just have conversations and enjoy each other's company and talk about important things. One of the things I would like to see happen is that we just gather around together on an author's work, either a singular book or a series of books that they've written, and discuss them, how we reacted to them, what we find valuable in those books. And it's much like a bibliotherapy session where we're kind of looking to books to present wisdom and guidance in life and the sources that are found within those books. So that's one of the formats that I'm looking at and considering as my involvement of this takes shape. But there's a lot to consider, there's a lot to process, and I'm looking forward to working with Stephen. Stephen?
Yeah. So I'm Stephen Barton. I'm originally from Oklahoma. I moved, long story short, after high school, I traveled the world for 2 years on mission trips with an organization called Global U, which was really kind of like I grew up in the church, but Global U was kind of like when I, as most evangelical Christians would understand it, like owned my Christianity, owned my own faith. And after that, I went to college in North Carolina, a little Christian college that had just sprouted up called the Excel College. And I did their core studies, which was absolutely phenomenal, introduced me to the Great Conversation, great books and whatnot, which I didn't hear about in my public school education. And then, I moved up to Pennsylvania to pursue a 3-month internship to finish out my BA in product development with a company called Diamondback. which is the logo here.
No promo.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, and then during that time, Jeremy and I kind of by happenstance met each other through friends of friends, and kept meeting and having conversations. I am very intent on understanding the reality that I'm living in. And I believe that stems out of a great deal of understanding God. And I think that you don't know how to treat a thing unless you know what that thing is. So I want to know how to treat this life well. And so my intentions are in my life is to just understand what it is I'm living in, what it is I'm living through, how to treat it. And so that's why I'm so intentional about these conversations. Yeah, my as Jeremy expressed, you had mentioned like your intentions are, like to go through great books and read through them. I'm very excited for that. I'm also excited, for not just the book club side of it, but also to, dive into just topics at hand a little bit as well. Whether it be just big conversations like what is faith, and how does it be lived out? How do we actually have a right understanding and treat faith well? But yeah, to understand that, and how do we relate to those today? Being a 30-year gap, I think, between you and I think it's useful from my perspective to take knowledge and wisdom that you have and that other authors and theologians, philosophers have, and how do we actually utilize that for somebody of my age, to start out, practically speaking, on a right level. So that's my intentions. I'm excited to have guests on and see what kind of conversations we spur, even bad ones, honestly, even the ones that are like really pushback. A lot of people that a lot of conversations that him and I have are kind of difficult sometimes to swallow for a lot of people, and so I'd be curious on what those objections are and how you and I can even grow because of the pushback we get from potential future followers.
From what I gather from you in the time that I've known you, is you seem to be a person who naturally thinks outside the box. And that is the entrepreneurial part of you, the leadership, side that you have developed through your education. And that's difficult enough, to be around people and to be someone who thinks outside the box and who is, in a lot of ways bound to think in systems. This is my goal, this is how I get here, this is how this is connected and related, and all this stuff. People think systematically a lot of times, but not every time. And so that's one way that your thought process might be a little difficult and a little challenging to get across to people and to express.
Yeah, great challenge on my hands.
Not only your interest, but in why something might be interesting to you. So you take that approach and add it to a topic like theology, where someone who is a mainstream Christian in American culture may have a very limited, and probably likely does have a very limited knowledge of the history of the church, the history of Christianity, the history of faith, the discussions that have been taking place over the last 2,000 years. And their knowledge is very limited to just a couple hundred years span of time.
Right, America,
pretty much. And then you add on to that, you have a very specific lens through which to view and consider and to even think about Scripture. And then at that point, the real challenge is, well, not all Christians have always thought the same or believed the same, throughout church history. And why is that? And what do we do with that?
Right.
What does that mean for the way we view Scripture? What does it mean for when someone comes to us with the same text that we've always read in one way and have thought that it has always been read in one way,
and blow it up.
They present
C4.
They present a different interpretation which has historical legitimacy. But it's just different.
Which is what you did to my faith
Oh,
a year and a half ago.
yeah.
I was just like, well, what about this? And I was like, wait,
Right.
what about that? Hold on.
So a lot of what we're going to talk about is just naturally going to be outside the box of people's normal reference point, and that's difficult enough.
Right.
And then getting someone to pay attention to a video that's more than 12 minutes long,
2 seconds long.
2 seconds
Right.
long. It's kind of like the cards are stacked against us. So I think what's kind of coming to my mind now as I share all this and talk about thinking outside the box and what we're trying to do here, I think we really need to have some major thought points or action points, not necessarily action, but thought points about what is it we're trying to say, what do we want people to sort of focus in on, who are we talking about historically or contemporarily? Why are they important?
Right.
How are they bringing something new and legitimate that is worthy of not just consideration, but possibly the investiture or the investment of one's faith and hope and all this stuff? Because, as a contemporary American mainstream Western evangelical Christian, you may never have heard of Saint Athanasius, but he is extremely important in what we believe in our faith, and we need to know why and what ideas, the way he interpreted Scripture, what ideas of his what ideas need to come back today in society for a healthier expression of faith and theology.
Which, on that note, I'm going to turn to the camera for a second. We are not trying to create any new theology. We're not creating any new ideas. There's actually nothing really original about the conversations we plan to have. The only thing that is original is the relationship that him and I have, that we're bringing our perspectives and this relationship into that conversation that's been happening for centuries now. And so we want to stress, I want to stress that point a little bit here, is that like we're not trying to like sit here in the middle of nowhere and just like talk heady stuff. We want to like bring it practical from what's been being discussed for years and years and years and years and years, and bring out that historical context, those transliterations that might have been missed in our sermons, and talk about those and wrestle with those, and not necessarily always have an answer to the question, but to at least have found a wrestle worth fighting for, and brothers and sisters to wrestle in it with us.
I would say, and the conversation of faith is one that is ever growing. If you are not growing in your faith, it's because you're not asking questions. You're not diving deeper into the history of the text, the meanings, the cultural applications, all these things that may or may not have application to our conditions today in society. So it's important to realize that we are going to be presenting writings, and we'll have those in front of us.
Yeah, linked to the videos as well.
Linked to the videos, and we're going to be making that available. So I would say that I would say that there is space for speculation and just asking questions. I think we have permission to explore life and faith in some of these areas. to think comprehensively and ask questions and speculate about answers. I think it could be a fantastic journey for those who are interested in following along and thinking outside the box.
So what, Jeremy, for you what is like the one thing that kind of excites you about this undertaking, and what's one thing that frightens you about how it might turn out?
Right. One thing that excites me is the ability to explore these questions in the context of community. So as you and I are talking, we're going to be bouncing off, and perhaps helping each other clarify certain matters or see the text in a way that we would not have seen it, by ourselves. I think it's also important and exciting that we be mindful to bring in other voices, not just the author that we're reading, but what would their contemporaries say? What would our contemporaries say? What has been said, that's relevant throughout time, depending on how old the text is that we're reading, because we will be reading contemporary stuff as well, and I think that's important. We need to understand what discussions are happening now, and not just discussing conversations from a long time ago.
Yeah, right.
What is frightening to me or uncertain is in those discussions, in that research that's required, the time that we will have allotted to prepare for these things, what will we miss?
Yeah.
That's
right.
That's the uncertainty part. And I think just in I've already said it, even in that, quasi fear of missing something, or even, God forbid, getting something wrong, as if that was the greatest crime we could commit. It is a process. It is a journey. And you have not always believed the things that you believe now. Your faith has grown in the last few years, and then certainly in the last decade. And I can say the same thing for me.
Yeah, right.
I'm in a new place, and I think a much healthier place than I was 4 or 5 years ago before I started my doctoral studies. And it was a process of having master's level seminary studies before that, and even before that I was beginning to read more into what we called at the time the grace message, and it's been a journey there. And part of faith is being willing to give up what you have relied upon as a life preserver, and actually, I think it's is it Paul Young or Basher Kruger who says, "Take sides with Jesus in the way you see yourself, or the way you see the Father." So we're looking to Jesus to guide us through these times.
Yeah, I'd say that question just bounced it back onto me. The thing that I'm excited about is to challenge myself, because I'd like to show up for people, essentially give a voice to some questions that maybe other people might not have thought about. And the thing that I'm most afraid of is essentially realizing, say, 3 years from now that hey, I was totally wrong about that thing. and I was so passionate and heated about it, because I will get passionate and heated, but and realizing oh crap, I hope nobody took that as gospel. I hope people realize that this is a journey that we're on together, that we're wanting to invite others to know that we're not trying to make absolute truth claims. You'll have to remind me who it was that said this, but I brought to you the thought of it seems like the point is actually just to become less and less wrong about your understanding of God, and you're like, oh, that sounds like so and so.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head who that was. But the idea is like the best we can hope for is to say things. It's a church father, I think, who said we can the best thing we can hope for is to say things that are less wrong about God.
Right, yeah, yeah, right. And so it's like that's my heart right now, and I hope that like I come back to that later on when I realize like, oh, I was wrong about that or that or that, and realize like, okay, even if somebody took that and ran with it, like at the end of the day, I hope people understand, and I hope I continue to understand that like it's just a matter of becoming less and less wrong about my understanding of God, not necessarily trying to be right. Yeah. Any closing thoughts or remarks as we finish out this first pilot episode?
I had something, but then it just went out of my mind.
Yeah.